Mental Health, meant to be on a Monday, 9 p.m. live if you want to catch us live with Joel Burgess. My man Joel is about to appear on. We're just sharing live on Facebook. So we've got, hitting you from all angles. We've obviously got you on Instagram live as well, left, right, and center. Welcome to my guest, Joel. Thanks for having us, mate. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing. I had no idea you're all over the other side of the bloody Atlantic.
I am, yeah, currently in Vancouver, but I probably don't want to know too much about that because I don't want to rub it in. But yeah, my wife's Canadian and from Vancouver, and we've got a 5-month-old daughter, and just came over to introduce her to her grandparents, and we've extended our stay just because obviously the situation in London isn't great. So yeah, feel very fortunate to be here.
Yeah, that's really one fortunate, but you don't have to beat around the bush, mate. We can take it. We can suck it up. It's fine. Are the things a little bit less strict over there then, I guess?
Yeah, it's a lot more relaxed. Like they've handled it really well. And like I've made a hypothesis that actually, because it's such a healthy country here, and actually the population here spends so much time outside. You know, there's so much outdoor activities to do. There's so much nature, and I do think like having that time outdoors really does improve their health and their ability to improve their immune system and X, Y, Z. So I think that has something to do with it. I'm not a scientist, so I can't make too many assumptions. But yeah, it's very relaxed. Like I'm off, hopefully off the Whistler on Friday. So
getting it all in. Yeah, that's what we love to. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because especially as someone who works. I'm putting words in your mouth now because I don't know for sure, but like in the fitness realm and that sort of thing, you do often. I do it myself. Make up hypotheses about immune system and all these types of things. But you have to. I like the caveat. You have to be careful, don't you? Making sweeping statements. It's good to have opinions and to chat about them, but then not to like endorse them. It's like it was just sit in the middle somewhere, not too extreme one side or the other. I think anyway, personally.
Yeah, 100%. And there's also just way more space here. Like you don't really like. There's a bit. We live by a relatively busy street, which in London would be absolutely packed with people. But there's like 5 people you'll pass in about 100 meters, and that's a busy road here. So everything's just a lot more, lot quieter and a lot calmer. So yeah,
a lot more spacious. So Joel, I mean, we've already started chatting, but this is the part of the program where I ask about you and. I mean, you're over at stateside, so maybe you feel a little bit more fluid with it. But British people somehow tend to be so embarrassed about talking about themselves. But being in the limelight a little bit from what I've seen, then I'm hopefully you'll feel comfortable with sharing your story, where you've come from, how it's been. You can go into as much detail as you like, and if there's something really interesting or I want to stop you and ask you on, then I definitely will jump in that respect. But like start from as young as you want, where you were born, how obviously we've got a mutual friend of Lee who got you connected to come on Mental Health. Just hit us with some information about the man who is Joel Burgess.
So born and bred in Sussex. I suppose I'll jump to the meaty stuff and really where it's relevant to this conversation, I suppose. But my aspirations as when I was younger was to always play professional rugby. I played in New Zealand for a year, got to uni, maybe got a little bit lost in partying and drinking and put on a bit of weight. But my aspirations through all of that was kind of play professional rugby. Sorry, I've got my baby. He's just arrived.
Understandable. That's all good.
And yeah, my aspirations were always to play professional rugby. I never kind of loved what I was studying at university. After university, I went to play for Newbury when we were in the championship, and that was kind of when I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to make it. I then had a very bad injury to my neck where I essentially dislocated a disc in my neck. Couldn't really feel a side of my body for some time. And eventually had a disc replaced in my neck. So I got a titanium disc in my neck. And that kind of stop my goals short at that point. At the time, it was like 2006. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. My kind of whole life ambition was kind of pulled from under my feet, and did what most of society would do, is just like chase the money and chase the kind of big corporate dream. The world of property, people were making lots of money and having a pretty relaxed life and going out for lunches and partying. And I thought, you know what, that sounds like a bit of me. So I moved into the world of property, and like for 4 or 5 years, I worked in London. But the whole time, I just didn't feel connected to it. I felt pretty lost. And there was something inside of me that was just like, there's got to be something more. Like, there's got to be this, and it's hard to explain, but there had to be something more. And I thought at the time maybe that was travel, or working abroad. So I put my hand up to worked in Singapore, but then I put my hand up to lead a team in Jakarta, Indonesia, which is a mad place. For anyone who's been there, they'll understand. But put my hand up to go and run a team in Jakarta, and did that for a year, but it just wasn't the lifestyle that I kind of wanted. And there was still something in me that was like, this isn't it. And I was still searching, and I thought, do you know what, maybe more money, more success would be the answer. And I was offered a job in Dubai. So I moved to Dubai, and to be honest, kind of got caught up in that whole search for like the myth of more money, more holidays, more, I drove a Ford Mustang and like wore fancy clothes, and I kind of got caught up in that. And, it got to a point where I was earning a fortune, and probably in society's eyes, you'd have said I was a massive success. But that was when I was at my lowest ebb, and I didn't, really feel fulfilled in the slightest. And I kind of lived for the weekend, and found myself on a Sunday night, like crying, and just thinking, this is the come downs, as it were, and, getting excited for the weekend again. And that was kind of just the pattern that I was on, or the sort of the road that I was on. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, and struggle with some. I'm not one for labeling, but I wasn't in a good place, essentially.
Yeah.
And I then came up with a food tech business idea around helping people eat healthier whilst on the go.
Joel, do you mind if I pause you so far? Because there's there's so much so far. I've got so many questions for you. Yeah, very inspiring stuff thus far, man. Even to like, I think that it's going to be like really relatable story. I'm sure you've started to tell your story and help people recently, and I bet you get people all the time who can really relate. And it's just crazy how. Well, one, there's always that element of when people first start their life story, as it were. They always skip so much of it. It's like straight in the relevant part. But I understand we've only got an hour. We could really break it down. But you also said about you skipped over uni and said you weren't doing something you enjoyed. So what was it that you were doing that you found that you didn't enjoy?
Yeah, so I studied mechanical engineering, and this is something I'd actually quite like to help people in the future with. But when you're 16, 17, like, you're given no advice. And, it's kind of like I was good at maths, I was good at physics, that kind of lent itself to engineering. But like, I look back now, and I'm a coach now, and I ask my clients, like, what were the things when you're younger that you kind of get lost in? Like, what were the things that you found yourself doing at home in summer? And for me, that was building stuff. I used to love like designing stuff and building stuff. And, I designed and built this dog training device for my mum's dog training club. And I sold a few of those. And I also launched this as a sandwich business. And so that was the stuff that I loved doing when I was younger. But I ignored all that and just kind of followed what people told me was, I should do. And I think I did one of those like personality tests or one of those career tests, and they were like, you'd be a good engineer. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And ignored this whole love of designing and creating. And So I do think actually it's a good point bringing it back to that, because there are clues, our life leaves clues. And actually when we're younger, before kind of the pressures of society and pressures of conforming comes in, there are clues for us when we're younger. Like, what did you do as a kid? What did you do when you were 7 and 8 or whatever? And for me, it was building stuff, designing stuff, doing stuff with my hands, being outdoors. I also loved, I was a captain of my rugby team. I loved inspiring them, people. Like, I loved inspiring my team. I put together a fitness program for all my team, and I would always do extra, just to be that kind of leader. And I loved that. I loved practicing for like the talks before the game, and I would write what I was going to say out, and I'd watch speeches, and that's the kind of stuff I loved. And of course, you're not told anything, to listen to that. And now I know, of course, there's clues in that, and a lot of the stuff I do now is totally aligned with what I did as a kid, and what I love doing then.
That is, it's that some people who are potentially not in that mindset might think, oh, that's idealistic. You can't just make a career or do things out of your hobbies or things you enjoy. But I mean, who's to say that you can't? Like, that's what we're getting down to, is like not only identifying your passions and what's going to bring you the most fulfillment, but like true currencies. Your currencies is your time and your fulfillment, right? And these things. I mean, you're hitting nails on the head, left, right, and center, that I agree with anyway. And please, if anyone has any questions on any of the platforms that you're watching on, please fire away in the chat, and we'll try and get them answered, as well as get through Joel's seemingly never-ending life story, which is full of twists and turns, which is really cool. I think that conformity or doing what you think you should, or you get told that you should, when opportunities everywhere. I think I did the same thing. I mean, I love my personal journey, but I became a professional dancer, but I didn't really know what else to do, because that was all I was good at. And you know what I mean? I'm glad I did it. It made me the person I am. And I think I did one of those personality tests too, and you end up with something random. And if you just follow that, I think a lot of people do feel lost, and they're like, I don't know what I enjoy, what I'm supposed to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that your first endeavor, your first love, pursuing rugby, and that success, do you think it was just things that other people perceived as successful was what your main aim was subconsciously, or did you think, was it that you loved rugby? How did you, now looking back, I'm sure you weren't aware at the time, do you think that why was it rugby, or why was it a sporting endeavor that you were that was your dream, right? And then also talk me through that realization of when you can't continue on that path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think rugby was, and I don't really have any regrets in my life, and like, I don't think it's healthy too. But I always loved rugby. Like, whenever when I was 13, like, that's all I'd read. I'd study the best. I would, I lived in the country in the middle of nowhere, and we had a rugby pitch above our house. I used to play on my own, so I'd like pass it to myself, and like, kick it to myself, and I'd be out there for hours, playing, and I'd always have a rugby ball in my hand. So like, rugby was always my biggest ambition. To be honest, I think I probably lost that a little bit, and lost myself a little bit at uni, because there was that conforming to, caring what people thought of you around partying and being, life and soul of the party. And that's kind of a story, or someone that I've kind of had to live up to. Whereas actually, if I kind of didn't worry about what people thought of me back in the day, I probably would have given a lot more energy and been more true to myself, and not gone out partying all the time, and actually trained harder, not drunk as much, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's definitely some like, I wish I kind of had the mindset I do now back then. But rugby was, professional sport, and mindset was in its infancy back then. So I didn't really, I don't think about that too much. But yeah, I mean, being forced to stop playing the sport you love is pretty heart-wrenching. But I think in all honesty, at that moment I probably realized I wasn't good enough to make it. So yeah, I mean, I came back and played for another 4 years after the neck operation, and then did my neck again. And so I've always, I find it very hard to give up. And I was eventually forced to give up the sport, and that really, yeah, that kind of did hurt. And yeah, probably lost myself a little bit after that. Yeah, it's never nice.
No, and then I guess that is what you said and already identified, which is really open of you, is in like trying to fill that hole, I guess, with something else, with more, and what the story is from your side is you actually did achieve that. You succeeded in the job, the money, the car, the thing that a lot of things that people, especially men, seem to be pressured into to succeed in, to be seen and perceived as successful, not only for yourself but from other people. And I think, yeah, hopefully that's starting to change. But how you went on that journey, you succeeded. So obviously you were driven. Obviously um, you did what you had to do. And then I guess that takes us back to where I stopped you, wasn't it? Of when you realized in Dubai, all right, I'm having that bravery at least to change and go, no, I'm gonna do something else. And you said you start talking about your app, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And like if I think back to it, the reason to like launch the business was probably driven by my ego. If anything, it wasn't driven for like, there was something inside of me that was just like, there's got to be something more. Like, I'm not fulfilled. I hate I can't carry on just living for the weekend. Like, I need to, there was something that I just needed to enjoy what I was doing. And I'm love being passionate about stuff, and I love giving everything my all. And I hated the fact that I turned up on Monday and I just got by. I turned up on Tuesday and I just got by, and I did the bare minimum, and I didn't give it my all. And for me, that's not the way I wanted to live. So there was something in me that just wanted more, but there was also my ego that was like, I could be a tech startup and be a billionaire, and raise millions and da 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 da. And I think that was part of me driving that as well. But I read the How to Build a $1 Billion App, and read it back to back twice in a row in a day, and I thought, actually I can do this, and came up with this idea for NutriFix. I was working on it for about 8 months whilst I had my day job, and pitched the idea to Just Eat. Just Eat invested 20 grand, and that was at a time where I just met my now wife. The job asked me to move back to Dubai because they seconded me to London, and I thought, do you know what, I've got to go all in. Handed in my notice and went in all in on NutriFix, and have been working on that for the last 4 or so years. And that's been nothing short of a life-changing journey. And there's just been numerous learnings through that journey in itself. And actually, I can get into that now, or I don't know if you had any questions, but
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you said it doesn't matter how things start sometimes, does it? As long as it happens. And you said that potentially part of it was ego and what we think of what is your opinion on ego in general, not your own, but just what kind of, you mentioned now that you do a bit of coaching. I'm not sure what kind of coaching that is, if it's more sports based or more life based or both. I'm sure you can answer that within the answer to this question, but how do you find that? What is your definition of ego? How does it affect people that you see in your work? And then what tools do you have that kind of you use to keep a check on yours?
mm-hmm. So my definition of ego, blimey, I haven't ever been asked of that. I think a definition of ego is it's a defense mechanism to anything perceived as a risk, to our psychological status or our psychology. So um, in essence, it's there to keep us safe, and that's the role it's playing. But for most of society and most of my life, I lived in total conformity to that, to my ego, and going through a coaching course, and I do kind of life and business coaching, I've learned that, the function or the role of the ego is, as I said, like to keep us safe. And what was interesting to learn was that our brain doesn't essentially know the difference between a physical risk or a social risk. So if there's a tiger hiding in the jungle and we see it, that our brain is essentially going through the same thing as if we see a social risk or a psychological risk. If we see our status at risk, or if we see our the fear of judgment or the fear of failure, there'll be a whole other set of chemical and neurological things that go on in our mind to try and keep us safe. And they come up in the way of like alibis or excuses or procrastination or fear, or all these kinds of things, or like anxiety or stress and all these kinds of things. So that's my understanding of ego. And my work, I suppose, the last 4 or 5 years is essentially the work of a coach is to help people shine the light on their unconscious ego or their unconscious habitual thinking, or shine a light on the things that are kind of holding them back. So that's the continually the work I'm doing, is just trying to make the unconscious conscious, trying to shine a light on the things that are holding me back, the habitual thinking, the my ego, my poor habits, my negative thought patterns, all these kinds of things.
Mm.
That's why coaching is so powerful. Once we get conscious or aware of those, we can then start to make change and behave differently.
Yeah, man, that's super interesting. I guess a big part of that then would be um, protecting your sort of, like you said. I found that really interesting about the body's response to the the social attack as well as the physical attack. It responds the same. I guess our social standing is how we perceive ourselves and how we think others perceive us. Like we have this, it's not fictional because we've created it, or we think it, therefore we are it. But we can be anything we want, right? At any point. But we just our ego is like we should be this certain way, and I guess once that's not dropped completely, I'm guessing sitting in that middle zone is not being aware of it and using it to your advantage. I guess is that correct, or would you say it's good to like shed it completely?
Uh, I know that there's kind of I'm not a psychologist in any
No,
means,
yeah,
but
yes.
I know there's kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then there's the kind of the
Mm-hmm.
inverse one, which is talk about enlightenment and self-actualization, where that's where you
Yeah.
kind of I think the ego will always be there. So it's not something we can get rid of. It's just something we can bring awareness of, and that's the sole aim of it. Is just trying to understand, like, is this decision driven by fear, or is this decision driven by love? And that for me is like, if I can come from a place of love or passion or my fulfillment or my values, that's how I want to live. I don't want to make decisions based on fear or from my ego. So I don't think it's anything you can ever get rid of, because it's so hardwired into us. It's millions of years of evolution. So it's not something we can get rid of, but it's something we can shine a light on and become aware of. We can also thin it. We can also make it less active
Mm-hmm.
by listening to our kind of our soul, our heart, our kind of inner knowing. If we listen to that more, then the voice in our head will kind of get quieter. And that kind of comes through self-love. If we love ourselves, like truly love ourselves, and make ourselves really proud, then there is less social risk, because we're not doing things for the acceptance of others. We're doing things for the acceptance of ourselves. So that's a way of thinning our ego. Um,
Yeah, mate.
yeah.
That's Yeah. I never really thought of it like that. I'm glad you responded in that way, though. I think that it's like I've heard people say, and no judgment to anyone who's ever's trying to like, who's trying to be positive and spread a positive message, then fucking good on you. But I don't think I agree with you in the sense that the ego can't be shed. It's something that, you know, whatever it is, whatever definition you have of it, we have this, you know, this sense of self, and thinning it out is a nice way to put it, isn't it? That is a nice way to put it, and just being less reactive or less habitual, like you said. You know, we've been conditioned by many different things, our experiences, and then society to have this habitual thinking to, you know, continue down a path, and I guess that's the scary part, is breaking them down as well, isn't it? Your habits. And I'm just making lots of assumptions here, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm sure you talk about how to create new and healthy habits with your clients when you're coaching and stuff like that. Have you got any pearls of wisdom on in that regard?
Yeah. So for me, it's all about our habitual thinking is essentially coming from our past, you know, and to change, we can't get anywhere different if we don't change our current situation. And the way to change our current situation, or change our current habitual thinking, is to fall in love with our future self and allow our future self to define or drive our behaviors, our decisions, our values.
Mm.
But most people are far too in love with their past self, their historic self, their old story, that they can't break free from that. And there's a quote that I recently posted on my page. It says, "Human beings are." I'm going to absolutely massacre it now, but you know, human beings mistakenly think we're fully complete. I mean, you know, we're not fully complete. You know, think about it. You think of who you were 5 years ago to who you are now. You know, two totally different people, right? You know, your worldview, your passions, your interests, they would have been so much different to who you were 5 years ago to who you are now. But yet we don't think the same as for our future self. Therefore, we don't look to change our behaviors now, or change our thought patterns now, or change our environment or our people or anything like that. So we just allow our past decisions to drive our future decisions. So all the work I do is about helping people get clear on who they want to be, who their best future self is, and then aligning their actions with that person, building evidence or identity capital to that future person. And I'll give you an example of this. So, and this is why I hate personality tests. I hate any test that define you with a label.
Yes, I'm glad you said that as well. This is good, because I think it's up to, we care too much about one, labels, categories, boxes, as a like a general society rule. But society feels like the incessant need to put other people and put you in it. I say fucking let them, just let them do it, and don't worry about that. And if you've got these contrasting parts of your personality and interests and all this, let other people try and work out, and you just like try and stick true to that.
Mm-hmm.
I once again stopped you mid floor.
No, it's not at all. And I think people have gotten lazy because they get handed a label, and then they sit on it, and they're like, and they confirm their identity with their behaviors. They kind of they justify their identity with their behaviors. Like I used to snooze for hours, and I said I'm not a morning person. You know, some people aren't morning people. A third of the population aren't genuinely not good in the morning. But I'd never tried it. I'd never tested it.
Yeah.
I had an identity of not a morning person, so I confirmed that with snoozing for hours every morning. That was until I did this work and worked out and understood who I want to be. And for me, that was someone who, you know, lives by example and is energetic and passionate and da 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 da. And so I tested for a couple of months, waking up at 5 a.m. And I did it for about 3 months. And I am 100% a morning person. Like, I think my chronobiology type is someone who performs better in the morning. I'm more energetic. I have better deep work and all that kind of stuff. But had I allowed my past label to define me, I wouldn't have even tried that behavior. But now my future identity of who I want to be drives my current behavior. I'll give you another example. Like through school, I was always a maths and physics kind of guy. And I was always told I'd never be good at language. I'd never be good at English. I'd never be good at public speaking. I'd never be good at writing. That was kind of a label that was given to me. And I accepted it for most of my life. And because of that, I never saw opportunities to even start writing or, do public speaking and And that was until a year ago where I read the book Millionaire Messenger by Brendan Burchard. And I fell in love with that book, and I fell in love with what he was about. And I was like, that is who I want to be in the future, someone like Brendan Burchard. Then I asked myself, what behaviors, what qualities does that person have? Annoyingly, they were excellent writer, he's numerous best-selling books, amazing public speaker, excellent with languages, good reader, passionate, energetic, lives by example, all these things. And that's what I did every single day. I'd put 30 minutes an hour first thing in the morning, and I'd write, or I'd practice public speaking on talks. I would read, I would, educate myself. And I essentially, for an hour a day, I created evidence of being who I wanted to be in the future. Mm-hmm. And I've done that over the last year. And my mindset and my belief system has completely changed. I've written a journal, I've written a book, which I wrote at the end of last year. And I now see myself as a writer. I now see myself as someone who writes books, and I do public talks, and I give workshops to businesses, and I coach, and that is now my biggest passion. So, and this is sorry, I'm really passionate about this subject because I feel like a lot of society are kind of waiting for their passion to be hit, to hit them, waiting for their calling to hit them, waiting for inspiration or motivation. But we have to create it. And our passion is not innate. Our passion is something we create and work at, and we build. I am passionate about writing. I'm passionate about public speaking. But 2 years ago, I was told I was rubbish at it, and I had a label I was rubbish at it. Absolute rubbish. You can become whoever you want to be by falling in love with your future self and acting as if you are that person, building identity capital. And I'm just so passionate about the subject because we don't even allow ourselves to imagine that future self. We get caught on that first step because most people are in survival mode, and they don't allow themselves past that first step to even imagine a future where there's something different. So I went off on a bit of a rant there, but I'm really passionate about the whole subject.
No, that's good. And what is interesting is, my understanding of the word passion, and a lot of my learning comes from talking to other people. Like we've got a backlog of mental health of like over 100 episodes during lockdown and stuff. So I got to speak to so many amazing and interesting people on different subjects, and they taught me a lot. And that's the whole point of mental health, is to be on the same playing field. It's not me. I've never wanted it to be something of me teaching or telling people how to live their life, because I'm here to learn as well. Like anyone can have an open conversation. Mm-hmm. It's important that I always try and remind people of that, remind myself of that, because that's where I started. That's where I want to stay. I think that's the beauty of it, to reach people that wouldn't necessarily, to be intimidating if it wants to be relatable. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that passion I got taught by someone is that the word passion comes from the Latin to like sacrifice or to suffer for. Mm-hmm. So I am going to challenge your passions. I think you're passionate about the subject. You said you're passionate about writing. You said you're passionate about, being a public speaker. I think you're passionate about spreading the subject. That's what you like. That's what you said. I went on a rant because you like got lost in it and you just wanted to talk about all these different avenues of where you can do it. I'm not. You tell me. You might be wrong. You might be like, Elliot, you're wrong. I am passionate about writing. You would suffer for it. If I would. If I was on a desert island, I would create a pen. I would, and I would do it. But that's just a food for thought, isn't it? About that extreme of how you're passionate about it. So the question is, thinking about your own passions, what are they? do they fit that mold and that test? And then we're gonna try and back and forth figure out how people can find their passions if they're struggling with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's definitely my understanding of it as well. I think there is a false understanding that we're kind of struck by lightning and suddenly we know our passion. And it's a large reason why people, they go into work or they go to a job and ask, what can that job offer me? Rather than what can I offer that job? What value can I give? And because they go into go into a role with that mindset, as soon as it gets tough, they go, I can't be what I'm passionate about. But we create passion by what you said, sacrifice. Like, writing does not come easy to me. It is really challenging. Like, I get writer's block, I get resistance, I want to procrastinate. It is hard work. Like, I really struggle. But there's just this there's not innate drive, there's just a drive that I want to get better. I want to master that craft. I want to be like a phenomenal writer. Same, I want to be a phenomenal public speaker. I want to be one of the world's best coaches. Like, that's that drive to master my craft. That is what's created passion. And it is not easy. It's not something like, there's resistance every single day. Every single day, every time I write, or every time I do public talks, or I do group coaching, like, I feel resistance, I feel alibis, I feel excuses, but that's part of the enjoyment and embracing that struggle. So yeah, I would say I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, but the way you explained it as well is it kind of was a bit more middle ground in the sense of, you do sacrifice for your writing, like you do suffer for it, you like endure and you have to, and you're still there and you're still saying you want to do it. It's led me on to my next thought is, you want to do these things, you're passionate about these things because you created them, because you know your future self. Who is Joel's future self? Who is he? And is there a danger of falling into the same trap as before, of wanting more and more? How is this different to when you wanted more money and more status when it comes to like the Dubai living?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, and something that I've like gone through very recently. And I work with my own coach, and this is the journey that we've been on together, where I got so caught up in becoming that future self that I kind of forgot to enjoy this part. And for me,
but that's your habitual from
exactly,
that lifestyle, right?
Exactly. And working with a coach, the benefit of working with a coach is that you shine light on your habitual thinking, you shine light on your unconscious thought patterns. And that was something that I shone a light on that. And for me, there's three things that come up. The reason why I'm such a big believer in having a vision and having a goal, and if it's something that really excites you, the purpose of having a goal is to make you fully engaged in life, like just to see what you're capable of. Like, I'm running a men's coaching group at the moment. I'm taking 8 men through a 6-month program, and the first session I came out of and I felt so alive. And in the session, I felt so engaged. Like, I was operating right at the edge of my stand, like right at the edge of my comfort zone, right at the edge of my skill level. Like, I was stretching myself. And for me, that's what it's all about, having a goal, is to just to make you fully engaged in the moment, to make you see what you're capable of doing. That is why having a goal and a future self is so important. But the biggest part of that is just letting that go. Like, having that person, having that vision of your future self, but letting it go and just trusting what you do in the moment will get you there. And the thing that comes up for me around the trust, like, my word of the year is trust, because I'm learning to trust myself. I'm learning to trust that the outcome will take care of itself. I'm learning that. And for me, the way to trust myself is really simple, and it sounds so basic, but just know to do your best, to give it your best. And it's simple, sounds simple, but for me, it's been life-changing, because at any one moment, I always do my best. But I used to ruminate for hours after I'd do a public speak or an event or launch a product, and I'd ruminate. I should have done that. Should have done that. Should have done that. Should have done that. Should have said that. Should have said that. And it drive me mad. But of course, I was just doing my best then as well. But I could do way better because I had context. I had hindsight.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
for
yeah.
me has been a life-changing, so simple, but a life-changing thought. Just do your best. And of course you can do better because afterwards, because you've got context. So for me, it's about just doing your best, trusting the outcome will take care of itself, and just using goals and your vision to see what you're capable of
Yeah.
to make you fully engaged in life.
Recognizing those tools, as it were, like you said, oh yeah, it's hindsight, it's context. You trust yourself and be proud of yourself. Like you did it. You might not have done it as perfectly as you wanted to, but you're gaining experience. You know how to do it better the next time if it's something you enjoy. And I think it's always good as well. I mean, I'm probably going to start to get not told off. I don't know who's going to tell me off, myself, for playing devil's advocate too much on mental health. But I always think that it's important to look at it, every story from all sides. And, whatever you do is, you've got to be proud of yourself and not be too easy on yourself at the same time. What is your thought process then on people who potentially say, but what if I don't want more? What if I'm comfortable where I am? They're probably less likely to hear these conversations because they won't be searching for them, right? They won't be gravitating them this sort of content towards themselves if they are satisfied. Do you think that they are? Do you think that that's all right? Do you think that it's fear? Like, what is your opinions on?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that because
I'm not trying to trick you out, by the way. I'm not
no,
anything in
cool.
that sense. It's just like it's difficult, isn't it? Because I think that as well. Like I think that people could have a lot more. They don't have to be in the job, but it's really easy for me to say that. I've been self-employed my whole life because my habit, that's what I'm not. I've already got that thought process. I've already habitually thought about being self-employed, being my own boss, so trying and changing, doing new things. So it wouldn't come easy to someone else. But I think that anyone can do it. I think that anyone can do whatever they want to do, whatever they enjoy. But it's also like it could maybe sound insulting to them if I said that to them. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't want to come across insulting. So I was just wondering I've thought it's crossed my mind a lot before about me, saying being really idealistic and do whatever you want. Yeah, man, fucking hell, it's chill. I just wondered if you had the same thoughts.
I suppose the thing that comes to mind is just understanding whether the decision is coming from fear or driven by love and driven by passion. Like the work I take my clients through, the first thing I'll always do is help them determine their core values. The core values are kind of who you are at your your deepest self. My core values are creativity, growth, passion, family, and freedom. When I was working in my property job, 5 years ago, I only really had one of those values, which was family. And that's why I felt totally out of alignment with myself. So if one of your values is security, financial security, who am I to say you should work for yourself or you should go off and, if that's one of your values, live into that. As long as you're empowered by making a decision from your values rather than making a decision from fear. If one of your values is freedom and creativity and you're in a stale job that's not serving those values at all, but your fear is telling you to work in those jobs, well then, I would encourage you maybe to work with the coach and explore that. So I'm not really in a position to say, you should do this or you should do that. But the place I always encourage people is understanding whether the decision is coming from a place of fear or a place of love, a place of passion, a place of authenticity, or not authenticity, a place of their values. And knowing your core values is like, for me, bread and butter. That is stage one, and that's not to plug it, but that's week one of Joel's journal is
No.
understanding your core values.
No, man, that's you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You know, you were kind enough to come on to mental health. Disclaimer: I'm not paying Joel to do this, to jump on. So you know, you can plug away as much as you like, man. And you know, it's not like it's not a corporation. This is Joel, a single person trying to make a difference in the world, trying to spread the message of people having a more fulfilled and potentially happy, whatever that means, a happier life. So no, man. There's, at the end as well, we will wrap up and make sure we go through every single one of your many streams of income to make sure that everybody knows where they can find you and how to contact you. Yeah, I think that.
I'll just come back to that point about growth and like wanting more and kind of like, for me, my understanding, and this is from like Tony Robbins, so like, you know, that is from reading his stuff and being pretty passionate about, not passionate about, but being very interested in his work. And I kind of agree with it. He says fulfillment comes from growth and contribution. And, you know, growth can mean whatever it wants. It can mean growing spiritually, growing health, growing family, growing relationships. It could be mean growing finances. It could be growing, you know, numerous things. So we so often focus on career, but we can obviously get growth from so many different places. And I do fundamentally believe and agree with his comment that fulfillment comes from growing and contribution, because when we are growing as a human, when we are stepping outside of our comfort zone, that's when we feel alive. That's when we that's when we are at our best. And if we're comfortable and not growing and we're stale, we don't get that, you know, that fulfillment from that growth. I mean, a contribution is a large part of that. You think of you know, when you give and when you serve, like that gives you this feeling of pride and fulfillment. So for me, that's something I would like just want to add when we talked about growth and fulfillment, is that for me fulfillment comes from growth and contribution.
Yeah, and that kind of links back to finding that balance that you said about trusting that you're on the right path for growth once you set it up and initialize it, and then finding the balance to also enjoy the present moment as well as it be steered in the right direction for growth. That's the fucking hard bit, isn't it? Let's be honest. That is the hard bit, finding that balance of, you know, and that's what I think is. I do agree. I think that there's, you know, happiness or, you know, fulfillment, whatever you want to call it, these positive emotions that are good to soak up and good to feel, come from progress. And that's why, you know, that's what the message of mental health is as well, is openness leads to progress. Like if you can one, start to listen, two, start to talk, and you can have a bit of self-awareness or align or get some of the things that you're thinking in your head out your head, that's openness. And once you've made that decision, you might only just make yourself feel better for getting it out. You might make yourself feel better because somebody listens, somebody understands, somebody helps you, whatever it is, you know, it's going to lead to progress. So I think progress, like you said, is very interesting. There's so many different ways to get that. And society has maybe taught us to focus on a few more and give them, prioritize more than others, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think like goals can be really triggering for a lot of people, you know, and a lot of people, you know, don't set goals because of that, and they've got bad reputation goals to a lot of people. And I like, some people more like to be more in flow. They like to set no goals and kind of see what turns up. And I kind of get that as well. Personally, from my experience, as long as you don't attach yourself to the goal, as long as your fulfillment, your inner self-worth isn't attached to the achievement of the goal, then goals are absolutely an amazing way to make you fully present. Like for me, I trust that the outcome will take care of itself. Goals make me fully present by making me totally engaged in what I'm doing. They're the direction, not the destination. And that for me is what goals are there for. Like I want to like, that's the direction I want to go, and I'm really excited by it. What can I do now? What can make me fully engaged now? That's the purpose of a goal. It's kind of who you become in pursuit of that goal, not the goal itself, or not the achievement of the goal.
And that links back to so many stories, doesn't it? Like, you can use the really obvious one of Tyson Fury becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. He attached his he said himself, like, he attached his self-worth and identity to that goal itself, and then when you get there, it's like, oh, is this it? Like, what do I do now? And that's scary stuff. But I think that's a really important message. I think that there's not enough people saying that, in my opinion anyway. It's just my opinion, just like anything that I say is. There's lots of people, there's a lot of positivity online that can feel like a lot of pressure to some people that maybe not in a good place mentally. And this channel is based on men's mental health, but I'd love to see that more, that these are my goals, but if I don't happen to fulfill them, my self-worth is not attached to them. I know that's a mouthful and nobody's going to write that, but just the awareness of that people, when they're putting stuff out and when they're reading stuff, have that in mind. I think that's a really, really important message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's having that internal self-love before attaching any of your self-worth to the achievement of the goals. Yeah, I totally agree.
I guess coaching and goals, purpose, passions, I think align perfectly with mental health, because a lot of the times when people feel down, I felt down a lot, and a lot of that was to do with my identity when I changed careers, and I didn't know how to underpin it with my values and my passions, what they were, and identify them. And you said similar sort of thing, when you went from rugby to working in cities and more corporate finance. So they definitely do work hand in hand. Do you experience a lot of that when you're doing your coaching? I guess, like, how in sync they both are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the like what we've been discussing is so relevant. If I talk about my own mental health, like I've had two moments or two times in my life where I've really struggled with my mental health. One was around that identity, where I was acting out of, I was so out of alignment with my kind of my values, or what gave me fulfillment, and for me, that was all at that time. It was all about external validation. It was about money. It was about things. It was about experiences. It was about partying, all these things. But I was totally out of alignment with my core values. So that was my kind of first struggle with mental health. My second was, I had a number of breakdowns 3 years ago and 2 years ago, and it was all about ruminating about whether I was going to be a success. And I got so attached to the outcome. I got so attached to who I wanted to be and the goals. And I got so attached to that, I would ruminate about it for ages. And that led to me to overworking and burnout and emotional breakdowns and brain fog and all these things. And they're my two. So it's been so relevant from like what we've discussed today. It's like that non-attachment to the goals of like, but have goals to see what you're capable of, and have goals aligned with your core values, but just don't get attached to them. I forgot your question.
No, mate. That was pretty much it. Thank you for sharing as well. It's lovely for you to be so open about it. Describe to us how it feels and what the word means to ruminate.
I don't know the sort of the origin of the word, but it's just to think over and over again,
circular thoughts kind of thing.
Circular thoughts. And it was always about whether I was going to be a success, whether I made the right decision, and whether I was on the right path. And I was always second guessing myself, and that led to more procrastination and more overwhelm, and and it was just a vicious circle that just went on and on and on and on, and that you feel it in your body. And I posted yesterday on my Instagram stories, when we are in a sort of, when we feel unwanted emotions, that's the last time we should trust our thoughts. That is the time when we need to do the opposite of our thoughts. 2 years ago, when I had my emotional breakdowns, my thoughts were saying, Joel, you just need to work. You need to work more. You need to do more. You need to work more, get more done. Then once you get there, you'll be fine. I now know, whenever my mind tells me that, and I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling anger, whatever my mind tells me, I do the opposite. And this is only something I've learned in the last, few weeks or maybe few months. So whenever my mind tells me you need to do more, I close down my laptop and I go for a walk. No music, no podcast. I just go for a walk. No questions, just go for a walk. So it's understanding, it's getting awareness of like how we can use our feelings to tune into our thoughts. How we can use certain cues, certain triggers to bring that kind of unconscious or conscious, those unconscious thoughts conscious. And back 2 years ago, I obviously I didn't have the awareness to even know that. So I thought, yeah, you're right. My thoughts are real. That's what I thought. That's what I believe. My thoughts are real. So I do need to work more. And then that just drove that vicious circle, and I had burnout, breakdowns, emotional breakdowns.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, a caveat to that is don't always do the opposite to what you think. Imagine. But yeah, no, that's really powerful stuff, mate. Is in because if you have a thought, you're enforcing every time you have it. You're enforcing it as well, aren't you? It's like almost a form of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. It can manifest itself in just thoughts over and over again. And every time you think about it, every time you go down that, you then you're stuck in that cycle, and you're galvanizing it, stabilizing it, and thinking, and then it becomes difficult to get out of. So, one, amazing that you've turned such your journey into such positives. One of the final questions I do have for you, Joel, is where do you think that it's like I need to be a success. Where did that pressure come from? Have you identified that? Was it just from yourself, or was it from family? No negative shout outs to but just the way you were brought up, society. Is it being a man in general? Do you think that's got something to do with it? What did you think it was?
I think there's something definitely in being a man, and I would say I'm a very masculine man naturally, and I'm trying to plug more into my feminine energy and more my intuitive and sort of curious and sort of inward looking energy. So I've always been a very masculine man, always goal driven, always about achievement. And that's kind of been ever since I was younger. I wanted to play England rugby. I wanted, so I think there's something probably in nature there of being very much a masculine man.
Whatever masculine means, anyway, it becomes very tricky, doesn't it? About these qualities that we identify or put attached to masculine, they're not necessarily gender exclusive. So that whole conversation gets a bit muddled. But what we perceive, what we've been taught and perceived as masculine, that's kind of that's what you're getting at, right? Is what. And then you feel like that it was mainly that, or yourself as well, or no external pressures.
No, I mean, no external pressures from my family. I was very fortunate, and there was no expectation from them to be anything really.
Did you feel like you had to be a certain place by a certain age?
I think certainly after university, I got caught on that sort of treadmill where it was like, bigger houses, and I kind of, and sometimes I let my mind go there, and I get caught up in that keeping up the Joneses sort of idealistic life of, having a 5-bed house, blah, 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 and like, I did get caught up in that, I must admit. So there were some external pressures, but for me now, like, genuinely, like, my self-worth is not dependent on what others think of me, and I'm pretty sure, like, there's probably some of my ego that kind of likes the achievement, and then likes the being able to buy nice things and do nice things. But like, what makes me feel alive at the moment is just like stretching myself, seeing what I'm capable of, and contributing. I love coaching. I love helping people. I love changing people's lives. Like, sounds pretty corny, but that's what gives me meaning.
So, and when you say you stretch yourself, just for clarity, you mean like out your comfort zone rather than cramming too many things in one day. You still balance it with obviously nutrition. Shout out to the app, Nutrifix. Don't forget about that, everyone. Make sure you download that. Like balanced within your whatever balanced lifestyle is for you is different for everyone else. Like you said, some people might not be a morning person, but when you say stretch, you really mean just like at the top of your abilities, like you said before, right? At the those, I think that's a really nice. If you don't, it's really corny saying it's an old one. I think it used to be on my MySpace. So when I was a kid, it was like feel the fear and do it anyway. It's kind of that feeling, right? Of you can do more, and you just need a bit of evidence. I really liked that, the way you explained that earlier as well. Some real takeaway points from today's, putting some money in the bank, some investment of some time of you doing the things that you want to become. It's very, very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty simple when you put it like that. But I've lost my train of thought. I was going to say something about what you just said before.
It's probably me, mate, waffling on and not being succinct. But we're about to wrap up, Joel. So I just wanted to, obviously thank you, and I will thank you again before the end. But just remind us, obviously, if you want to, do you want to do this bit about where we can find you? I was going to do it all for you, but it's up to you. You can.
Yeah, happy to. My Instagram profile is probably best. I am Joel Burgess. It's the only one any Instagram handle I could get. And my biggest focus at the moment is Joel's Journal, which is a 13-week journal, kind of guided coaching journey where, we go through stuff like working out your core values. We go through things like your fit, your goal setting, working out what's holding you back, your limiting beliefs, your fear, moving into action, and then talking about self-love and resilience. And yeah, I'm really excited about getting it in people's hands. We've only been live for a week, but it's going well. So really excited.
Yes, excellent stuff. And just because it's January 1st is gone, there's no fresh starts or becoming the best version of yourself. There's no time limit on that. You can start anytime. Isn't that right, Joel? Anytime you want. The orders are there. Anytime. You can buy them, purchase them, get it in. You've spoke to the man. You've seen how nice the face of the brand, and it's really important to also support independent business. So it's lovely stuff you're doing. We didn't actually speak much about Nutrifix app. I actually don't know what it does.
So yeah, it's
you do an elevator pitch. Have you got one in you?
Yeah, so we're actually launching a new product in February, which is essentially like it puts your dial on auto drive, so you can, essentially enter all your details, and it just gives you an automatic meal plan for the week, but also locates meals nearby, tailored to your body's needs.
Wow, that is some fancy tech. You weren't joking about a tech startup right there, Joel. You've been a legend. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Vancouver. And thank you for your time, your energy, your openness. I'm just going to use the word legend again. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, mate.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, all the best with these chats and the podcast. And I hope it really flies for you.
Thanks, man. And that's a shout out. Don't forget that we're on podcast now as well. All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Elliot. Catch you soon.
Bye.